Hello everyone, this is Professor Robert Solis. Welcome to this next video lesson. So what we're going to do is to create a hexagon generator. And I want to display a hexagon, a solid hexagon, based on the user number. I'm asking the user to enter anything from 2 to 6. Now, I have this general graphical user interface, but I may have to modify it. For example, maybe this has to be a little bit taller, or maybe it doesn't have to be so tall. So I'm going to hold off on the exact design requirements. I have a text box over here that I'm calling txt user num. I have a button over here that I'm calling btn draw hexagon. And then finally I have a label over here that I'm going to call lbl output. Okay, so let me double click and that'll take us into the code area. I don't need the properties panel, so I'm going to hide that. And of course I'm going to have my declarations. And then I'll say get user input. We'll perform some sort of a calculation. And then, of course, I got to generate an output. Okay. All right. Now, in addition to what I've just described for the graphical user interface, I've drawn in general what this is going to look like. The user is going to enter a number, and this is what a hexagon looks like. So we'll make that up with a bunch of asterisks, which I'll just call stars. You'll notice that if the user enters the number 5, that means that we're going to draw a total of 5 stars for that first row. Also notice how many spaces we're drawing beforehand. It's 1 minus the user number, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you'll notice from row to row that the number of spaces decreases by 1. So I go from 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. Notice that the stars increase by 2 from row to row. So this is 5, 7, 8, 9. Notice that we keep on going until we've drawn that maximum row, and then we're going to draw the bottom part of the hexagon. So what I've done over here is to draw or to type up a pseudocode, kind of like an algorithm of how I think we can solve this problem. So we're going to draw the top part, and then we're going to draw the bottom part of the hexagon. Drawing the top part involves all this, which we'll get into momentarily. Draw the bottom part includes all these different steps. So what I want you to be able to do comfortably is to take pseudocode like this and translate that into a Visual Basic program. Okay, well, the first thing that I'm thinking of, let me go back over here to Visual Studio. In terms of declarations is I want to be able to declare an output variable as a string, and I'll set that equal to nothing because things are going to be sent to this output variable, namely the spaces and the stars and going to the beginning of the next line, so forth and so on. I'm obviously going to have to get the user number, and we'll declare that as an integer. Now, there are a certain number of spaces outside that we have to draw, as you can see here from our diagram. There are spaces outside here that need to be drawn. So what I'll do is I'll just simply create a variable called spaces to draw outside. And I'll declare that as an integer. So what this does is it's going to be a number of spaces to draw from row to row. I'm also going to have a number of stars to draw, right? So we'll say dim stars to draw, and that also will be an integer. Now, anytime that I see a pattern like this, I know we're going to definitely need a counter as we loop, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, draw a space. Have we finished drawing our spaces? No, draw the next space, and the next one, and the next one. So we have 4 spaces. We'll set the counter to 0, say for example. As long as the counter has not drawn all of the spaces, keep on drawing a space. So having said that, I'll declare a counter as an integer. There we go. All right, so let me get the user number, and remember, we are asking the user to enter a number from 2 to 6. If they enter a different number, then we're going to have to say something to the user, like we'll display a message box indicating that the user has not entered their number correctly. All right, so first of all, I'll say user num is going to be convert, or is going to be assigned, I should say, convert dot to int 32. Whatever is inside of that text box dot text. So let's get the user number from the text box and put it into this variable called user num. Now I better check if the user in fact entered the correct number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say while the user number is less than 2, or if the user number is greater than 6. See, if that's the case, then you didn't enter a number correctly. See, that number has to be either 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But if it's less than 2, then that's invalid. If it's greater than 6, that also is invalid. So the way that I'll solve this is to display a message box. So I'll say message box dot show. And see, the problem is the user did not enter a number in that range. So the message that I want to communicate is this. So we'll say enter a number from 2 to 6. That's the message that I want to communicate. Now, at the top of this message box, I want there to be a title. So if I hit comma, space, now I can affect what the title is going to be for this particular window. I think I'll just simply say out of range. Let me go outside of that quotation mark, comma, space. Now you'll notice that I get a drop down. What kind of button do I want to display to the user? I think I'm just going to simply display an OK button, which is this guy over here. By the way, you have to hit the space bar. Now I'm using Visual Studio 2015. If you're not using Visual Studio 2015, I don't know if it gives you this pop-up. You could just simply type in message box, button OK. But if I just hit the space bar, this list comes up. I double click over here. An OK button is going to be displayed. Next, I want to display an icon. So if I press comma, again the space bar, I get a list of all of the different icons that are available. Well, I'll use the one that says error, but I don't care which one you use. I'm going to use message box icon error. Double click over there. Let me go outside of the parens and press enter. So in other words, if the user did not enter a number from 2 to 6, this message box is going to display. What that message box does is it lets the user know, hey, you didn't enter a number in the correct range. I think what I'll do next is I will blank out whatever the user typed into this text box. So to do that, txt user num.text, we'll set that to nothing. So the quote right there means we're going to make it blank. Next, I do not want to continue with my program because you did something wrong. So I'll just simply say exit sub. What that exit sub does is it says, we're done here. We're finished with this program until you enter in the correct number. Okay? So that's what this while statement does. It verifies that the user in fact entered a number within the valid range. Now, if they in fact entered a number within a valid range, now I can go ahead and perform the calculation, which is to draw the actual top part of the hexagon. So over here in the calculation part, I'm going to write a comment to myself, which is draw the top part of the hexagon. That's the first thing that I got to do, right? According to my pseudocode, draw the top part of the hexagon. What else am I supposed to do? Well, I'm supposed to draw the bottom part of the hexagon after I do that. So over here, draw the bottom part of the hexagon. So that's really the two general things that I need to do. Now there's a lot of specific stuff that I need to do as well, but these are the general things. And so what I like to do is I kind of highlight it with these stars that list here. This is a big thing that needs to be done. Now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do exactly this. I'm going to draw the top part of the hexagon. All right, well, first of all, I'm going to need to know what the spaces to draw outside is. Well, first of all, if I go back over here to my diagram, if the user entered 5, notice how many spaces I need. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I think you will agree that whatever the number of the user is, if you subtract 1, that'll tell you the number of spaces that need to be drawn before the stars. So I go over here, user num minus 1. That tells me how many spaces I need to draw. All right, how about the number of stars to draw? Well, again, if I go to my diagram, on that first row, look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the same number that was entered by the user. So how many stars do I need to draw? Well, that's based on whatever the user number is. That tells me how many stars to draw. Okay, now let me go ahead and go back to my diagram, and let's see if we can determine how many rows to draw. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like I have 5 rows to draw. And so what we want to do is, while we have not drawn all 5 of these rows, right? So I could do something like this. Let's go back over here. It says, while we have not drawn the maximum row. Well, the maximal row, I think you can see here, is the 5th row, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So as long as we haven't drawn 5 rows, we're just going to keep on going. I'm sorry. Go back over here. So let's see here. One of the things that I could do is I could create something like this. We'll say while stars to draw is less than or equal to, and I'll take the user number, the user number times 3 minus 2. Let's press enter over here, and let me put a comment over here. While we have not drawn the max row. All right, so what does this mean? User number times 3 minus 2. Let's think about this. If I say user number times 3 minus 2, okay, so we go back over here. We'll take that user number. So the user number, it says over here, times 3 minus 2. So times 3 minus 2. All right. If I take that user number, if I multiply that times 3, that's 15. 15 minus 2, that's 13. Let's see what happens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So by me taking the user number, multiplying it times 3, and subtracting 2 from it, I know if I've reached that maximal row. Let's try it again over here. I drew one over here. If the user number is 6, let's see what happens here. If the user number is 6, so how many of these stars am I going to have to draw for this last row? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 14, 15, and 16. Well, if I take that number 6, 6 times 3 is 18. 18 minus 2 is 16, which is exactly how many stars. So what I've done through observation is I've decided how many stars need to exist for that last row, and I'm using that over here in my while statement. So I'm saying, while the number of stars to draw, which of course in this case it's 5, then it's going to be 7, then it's going to be 9. But it starts off at a smaller number, right? But while those number of stars to be drawn is less than the user number times 3 minus 2, which again is this observational formula that I just came up with. As long as that's the case, we're going to keep on doing this over and over and over again because there are rows in our hexagon to draw. Okay, I think you'll agree we need to draw these spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4. So over here, I'll set the counter to spaces to draw outside. Let's draw those spaces. I can use a while statement for that. While the counter is greater than 0, and let me just put a comment up here. So in other words, let's draw the initial outside spaces. So in order to draw those original outside spaces, I'll take the output, whatever that happens to be, and I'm going to update it. How am I going to update it? With a statement like this. Add a space to the output. So in other words, what this thing does is it appends the output. It appends output with a space. What does the word append mean? To add to. Imagine that you had the cardboard tube of a paper towel roll, and you put in a billiard ball, and then you add another billiard ball, and yet another. So inside the paper cardboard tube, you have all these billiard balls. The output stays the same, and you're just simply adding to it. We call that append. So let's appends the output with a space, and that's what we're going to do. Take the old output, give it a space, and now the new output is whatever it was before with an additional space. Now, I got to make sure that I am decrementing. So I'll take that counter, and I'll use the shorthand notation, which just simply means counter is equal to, or is going to be assigned, counter minus 1. In other words, decrement counter by 1. That's what this statement does. So counter is initially going to be however many spaces. Let's say it's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. Okay, so is 4 greater than 0? Yes, add a space. Now it's 3. Is 3 greater than 0? Yes, add a space. Is 2 greater than? Is 1 greater than? Yeah, so we keep on adding spaces. Finally, is 0 greater than 0? No, it's not. Okay, so then we're finished with this part of the program, which will do what? Draw initial spaces on the outside. Well, once we've done that, now it's time to draw the stars. So what I'll do is I'll take that counter and I'll assign it to stars to draw. Well, now that I have that, let me do another while statement similar to the one that I have above that draws just the stars to draw. In other words, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars to draw. In this first case where the user enters 5. So I'll say while the counter is greater than 0. So in other words, what we're going to do is we're going to draw a row of stars. Okay. So while that is the case, let's see here. Let me go back over here. And okay, so while I have stars to draw, append a star to the output. See, I forgot to show you this before. When it comes to the spaces, what do we have to do? We have to append a space to the output. Over here, this is saying append a star to the output. Okay, so how do I do that? Take the output, whatever the old output is, and I'm going to concatenate a star. Or in other words, what this thing does is it appends a star to the output. Just like this thing suggests. Append a star to the output. Now, we better make sure that we decrease our counter. So we'll say counter minus equals 1. And so that's going to decrement the counter. That's it. You always have to do that within a within a while loop. So this chunk of code right here draws the initial spaces. It draws these initial spaces. This chunk of code over here is going to draw the initial stars. Okay. Now we got to go to the beginning of the next row. But before we do that, we also have to make sure that we decrease the spaces before from 4 to 3. We have to increase the stars to draw from 5 to 7. So in other words, you have to increase them by 2. And then we go to the beginning of the next row. So over here, I'll just put a comment based on this idea. It says get ready for the next iteration. Okay. So get ready for the next iteration. That means the next lap, right? We're going to take another lap around the track. So we're getting ready to do another loop. How do I do that? Well, first of all, it says go to the beginning of the next line. Well, how do I do that in Visual Basic? This is how I do it. Concatenate VB new line. So you've seen this before. This VB new line constant just simply means go to the beginning of the next line. Go to the next line. That's what this thing does. What else am I supposed to do? Increase the stars to draw by 2. Okay. So stars to draw plus equals 2. Increase stars to draw by 2. That's what this thing does. What else am I supposed to do? Decrease spaces to draw outside by 1. Okay, so stars spaces, I'm sorry. Spaces to draw outside. And it said to what? Decrease that by 1. Okay, so minus equals 1. Decrease spaces to draw outside by 1. I don't have to put comments for every single one of those. I'm doing that for you guys since you're intro students, just to make sure that you understand. I'm translating from this to this. Right? So I'm acting as a translator from English to Visual Basic. All right, so what this does, what this entire while statement does, is draws the top part of a hexagon. Now, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, and in the output section, I'm going to put lbl output.text is going to be whatever the output variable is. So I'm going to assign this to the text portion of this. We still have to do this code. We're not complete. But I just want to show you what we've got so far. So if I save my work and then run the program, and let me type in the number 5 over here. Okay, so you see what we have. Let me see, first of all, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's good. I should have 5 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, looks good. And now what we need to do is to draw the bottom part of the hexagon, and that's what we're going to do over here. So it looks like over here in my code it says, okay, draw the bottom part of the hexagon. That's fine. So while we have not drawn the last row of stars equal to the user number. All right, so in other words, what that means is this row is not equal to the user number. This row of stars is not equal to the user number. This row of 7 stars is not equal to the user number. This row of 5 stars, that's equal to the user number 5. Stop your program, right? Because you've drawn all the stars. So that's the idea of what we need to do. All right, well, in order to do that, in order to draw the bottom part, I'm going to have to think about the spaces to draw and the number of stars to draw for that next row. Let's go back to my diagram. Do you agree that after we've drawn this maximal row, the number of spaces to draw is 1? I have 1 space to draw, so we'll say spaces to draw outside. We're going to assign that to 1. All right, now, what I'm going to do is a trick. I know that spaces to draw keeps on getting incremented by 2 every time we do this. In fact, over here, when we had the number of spaces to draw, and then it went over here to get ready for the next iteration, it increased this by 2, which means that the next one would have had a star out here and a star out here, but I don't want that. I want this row of stars, but if I had a star over here, that'd be 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I take that value, subtract 4 from it, I will get the correct number of stars to draw. So over here, stars to draw is going to be whatever the old value of stars to draw was, and I subtract 4 from it. All right, go back over here to my code, and let's see here. So what does it say to do? Okay, so while we have not drawn the last row of stars equal to the user num, okay? So I go back over here, while stars to draw is greater than or equal to the user number. That's what this thing does, right? Do I still have stars to draw? Well, if you're drawing this row, yeah, because you have additional rows to draw because you haven't reached that one row that has only 5 stars, which is what the user entered. So we go from, let me see, what's the 7, 9, we go from 11 to 9 to 7 to 5. At this point, we stop. That's what this thing does. Okay, so let's establish what the counter is. So the counter, so we can draw those spaces, is going to be assigned to spaces to draw, because that's what this thing says over here. It says draw the initial outside spaces. Okay, so we're going to draw the initial outside spaces like this. While the counter is greater than 0, which in other words, it's draw the initial outside spaces, While that is true, I'm going to take that output, I'm going to append to it a space. Now, I got to make sure that I am reducing the counter, because it's like you and I running around the track. Every time that, maybe you start off with a handheld counter that starts off at 4 because you want to run a mile. So that means you have to run 4 times around the track. So this is 4, say for example. Now it's 3. Now it's 2. Now it's 1. So as long as this thing is greater than 0, we keep on doing this. And what are we doing? We are sending spaces to the output. That's what this section of code does. All right, once we've done that, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to draw the row of stars. Okay, so we draw the row of stars. How do we do that? First, I'll take that counter and I'll set it up to stars to draw. Now, let me draw the row of stars. How do I do that? With a while statement. While the counter is greater than 0, while that's the case, then I'm going to send stars to the output. So the output is going to be concatenated with a star. And that's what this says. Append a star to the output while we have spaces to draw. Actually, while we have stars to draw, sorry. While we have stars to draw, then we keep on doing this. We append a star to the output. And that's what this thing does. Okay, what are we supposed to do next? Get ready for the next iteration, okay? And what does that mean to get ready for the next lap? Right? Well, go to the beginning of the next line, okay? And we're going to concatenate that with a VB new line. What does that do? It goes to the next line. What else am I supposed to do? Decrease stars to draw by 2. Okay. So stars to draw. Let's decrease that by 2. What else am I supposed to do? Increase spaces to draw outside by 1. Spaces to draw, increase it by 1. So again, I'm going from here and translating from English into Visual Basic. So that's what it means to prepare. When I'm all done, then the output variable, as it contains more spaces and more stars, is simply going to be sent to the text property of the output label. Let me save my work and see what happens. So over here, let's enter the number 4. Uh-oh, looks like I have a problem here. Let's see here. I'm gonna pause the program here by clicking this. And what's going on here? Let me hover on top of counter. It looks like counter is 8. Stars to draw is 8. Okay. Oh, I know what I forgot to do. I forgot to put a counter decrement statement over here. I'm typing too fast. Let me decrease. Let me stop that program. Here's what I forgot to do. Counter is going to be decremented by 1, just like over here, right? So counter's got to go from 4, 3, 2, 1, or from 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, whatever. It's got to decrease. I never decreased it, so it just kept on looping over and over and over again. That's called an infinite loop. Let me save the program. Try it again. Let's see if I did a better job this time. So let me enter a 4. Okay, looks good, but it looks like I've got a problem over here. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, and over here 1, 2, 3, 4, but it looks like I have one too many stars over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars. There's something going on with my program here, because that's supposed to be only 4 stars. Okay, so everything works fine except for this draw the bottom part here. Draw the bottom part. All right, let me think about it. Let's see what's going on over here. So it says, okay, so while stars to draw is greater than or equal to user number. Okay, that's fine. And then I have the number of spaces to draw. It looked like that was okay. Let me just double check. Like if that's 4. It looks like it drew the number of spaces correctly, so that's no problem. Spaces to draw outside, and so we'll just simply draw the spaces. All right, and then I have the number of stars to draw. So the number of stars to draw, we're supposed to draw 2 less than what we had previously. So the way that I did that is I just simply said stars to draw over here is going to be stars to draw -4. Maybe that's what the problem was. And then over here I have a counter that decrements and draws the number of stars. Oh, I know what I did wrong. I said as long as the counter is greater than or equal to, I shouldn't have done that. I should have just said equal to. Because, for example, if we're going to go to the track and run 4 laps for a mile, let's start off your counter in your hand at 4. So if I run 1 lap, I decrement that from 4 to 3, another lap to 2, another lap, 1, another lap, and then finally it goes to 0. By including 0, we're going to run a 5th lap. I only want 4, so I accidentally included that. All right, save my work. Let's see what happens now. So let me type in 4. Ah, that's better. 1, 2, 3, 4. How about 6? What does that look like? That looks pretty cool. Okay. So it looks like, and what happens if I enter a number like 7? Okay, so I get a message box, enter a number from 2 to 6, out of range. Here's the error icon. How about the number 1? Yep, same thing, out of range. So this thing will only accept numbers from 2 all the way up to 6. So I guess I could reduce the size of the form a little bit if I wanted to, or the size of the label, but you get the idea. We're just simply drawing a hexagon based on this idea, this algorithm. So we call this pseudocode. What I'm going to do now is to give you more pseudocode as the semester progresses. You take this, you convert it into Visual Basic. All right, that's it. This is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson was helpful. Have a good day. See you next time.